Hey everyone, welcome to Mosaic at Home and happy Mother's Day. No matter where you're watching from or how you're watching, we're grateful that you decided to spend the next 50 minutes with us. If you're being inspired by these online experiences, why don't you take a moment right now and share it on any platform you're watching from. Our heart is to share it with as many people as possible, and the easiest way to do that is with social media. We invite you to partner with us here at Mosaic, and there are many ways that you can do that. One way is by hitting the share button, but another way is through giving. I'd like to invite you to go to mosaicchurchsa.com/giving and follow the links to partner with us as we serve our community and world. You can also give through the text or through the apps listed. Either way you choose, we just want to say thank you. The generosity you show allows us to make a difference. Right now, we want to encourage you to do something that we believe is vital to our faith, and that is connecting with God. Connect with Him because He loves you and wants to guide you, speak to you, and bring you freedom. We also want to encourage you to connect with others as well. One way you can connect is by engaging with Mosaic in your own home, with those in your household like you may be doing right now. You can also make connections in small groups. Just visit mosaicchurchsa.com/groups for more details. Students, you can connect with us at Drive Student Ministries on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. The important thing is for us to connect with God and connect with others. So the easiest way for you to figure out what your next step would be is to visit our website, mosaicchurchsa.com. So with that being said, the moment you've been waiting for is here. Our experience is about to begin, and it all starts right now.
Someone undeserving be so lovely in your eyes. For me, you died to be the key to heaven's eternity. It's in your death that I find life again. It's in your life that I find hope. Jesus, we lift you higher. You are our heart's desire. Jesus, we lift your name up higher through our praise. Jesus, our blessed Savior. You are our life sustainer. Jesus, we lift your name up higher through our praise. How could someone undeserving be so lovely in your eyes? For me, you died to be the key to heaven's eternity. It's in your death that I find life again. It's in your life that I find hope. Jesus, we lift you higher. You are our heart's desire. Jesus, we lift your name up higher through our praise. Jesus, our blessed Savior. You are our life sustainer. Jesus, we lift your name up higher.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Pour it out to you. Pour it out to you. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Sing it out, all the earth. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Lord, you're so great. Great are you, Lord.
Hey, we are so glad that you are tuning in. Welcome to Mosaic at Home, and happy Mother's Day to all of you moms tuning in. If you're joining us for the first time, thank you. We hope that today's message is a blessing to you. And for those of you who have been watching or attending in person, maybe for a while, you know we've been praying for revival in our own hearts, in our homes, in our church, our community, and the world. And wow, we are seeing God's hand at work, changing and transforming hearts and lives. So we are in week 3 of our series, Rethinking Disruption. After a year like 2020, right, it's good to rethink what God is doing in the midst of all of these disruptions. I'm going to encourage you to keep tuning in throughout this series, and when you're comfortable, come join us in person if you can. Last week, we celebrated my mom's 89th birthday. And it's such a blessing to not only still have her with us, but to have her so close. See, her and my dad moved from the Rio Grande Valley to Austin last year. And so we're able to visit and see them a little bit more often, right? And so while we sat and ate and watched family videos, it was so cool to see just family members who were my dad when he had a full set of hair, my son who's now 28 when he was just a little bitty baby. But all of those videos sort of reminded me of when we see our children, little boys and little girls, and this is before all of the challenges of life, right? And I can remember all the things that I wanted for my son, for example, like good health, right? Love, peace, joy, wisdom. I wanted him to do well in school and sports and music and good manners, and to have good friends and have a good social life. And we envisioned this perfect life for them, right? We want better for them, better than what we had for ourselves. We place our desires and dreams on them, right? And we also pass on things like our genetics, like our hair, eyes, nose. We pass on habits, our dreams, our goals, and our promises, right? Promises like mom will never let you down, or mom will never let anyone hurt you, or mom will always be there for you, or even mom will buy you a toy if you behave at the store. But let's be real, some of these promises will be broken, whether intentionally or not. We will disappoint. We will most likely also disappoint ourselves and carry the guilt. Moms, our promises hold so much power. They have so much weight, right? So the letdown of our broken promises can be difficult to understand. But, you know, we were also children once, and our moms or the mother figure in our life, maybe somebody else that helped raise you, they also wanted the same thing for us, right? We as children, then teens, and then into adulthood and where we are now, hold certain expectations for our moms, and we create these pictures of what moms should be, and usually we will be disappointed at one point or another. Again, we forget that they're people, we're people. People will fail us. And guess what, moms? Your children may disappoint you as well. But I get it. As moms, we are all going to try our hardest to be everything for our children. Moms make promises with all of the intentions in the world to be able to fulfill them. But it is more likely that some of those promises will be broken. But we can look at the broken promises, those disruptions, differently. Because God is not one who will break promises. While people, even those who love us dearly like our moms, can make mistakes, you can count on God to never leave you or forsake you. He's a tried and true promise keeper. God's promises are promises that we can trust. So let's go to 2 Kings chapter 4. It's a story about a single mom who is very concerned for her sons as they'll become slaves if they're not able to pay the debt they have. So she has to rethink this disruption, right? Her husband has died, she's a widow, and she might lose her sons as well. See, in this time, in the Old Testament, people could not talk directly to God, but they could hear from God through prophets. And Elijah was a prophet, and so this woman, this mom, approaches him regarding her concern of losing her 2 sons. So let's go to verse 1. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elijah, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now this creditor is coming to take my boys as his slave." Major disruption taking place. So first point, You have to know the promises to claim them. See, she knows the promises of God and reminds Elijah of them. The first thing is that she uses the fact that her husband served and was in training essentially for ministry work. Now that he has passed, she's wondering how will she be able to provide and keep her sons from becoming slaves. See, part of the promise that came with her husband serving in that capacity was provision and protection from God. So during that time, it was believed that if you did the right things and honored God, he would provide and protect you. So she brings that up to the prophet and reminds him of that promise. How many times have we claimed a promise that God has for us? Moms, if you promise your child to take them to get ice cream if they behave with company around, what happens when the visitors leave? Mom, can we go get ice cream now, right? Mom, you said you would get us ice cream when visitors left. Mom, you promised. Mom, you said, right? Are we able to remember the promises of God? Are you spending enough time with God to know his promises so that you can claim them? Do you know him to understand the value of his gifts, such as protection, peace, joy, wisdom, love, salvation, versus the expectations of what we think or believe is valuable, right? Being blessed is beyond the material things. We work so hard to acquire and work even harder to provide for our children, but his blessings have so much more value. So let me just share a few of God's promises for protection. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's Isaiah 41:10. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's Psalm 23:4. And he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. And that's Psalm 91, verses 1 and 2. Around here, we often pray that you would know God and that you would find freedom, discover your purpose, and make a difference. But first, we need to seek and want to know God. Now let's look at how Elijah responds. In verse 2, Elijah replied to her, how can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? See, God wants to use our ordinary to make something extraordinary. God asks her what she has, not what she is lacking. She says she has nothing, like nothing else in the house, no water, no clothes, no food. I've often wondered if maybe she downplayed having the oil because it's the thing that was ordinary. It's the everyday type of item. But God takes the ordinary and makes extraordinary things with it. He is the God of more than enough. He's the God of multiplication. He has taken 2 fish and 5 loaves from a boy and fed thousands. He took what was available to demonstrate that with faith and God, there is multiplication. Things don't stay the same when God is in the mix. In Exodus, God asks Moses what he has in his hand, and Moses replies, a staff. But then we see in Exodus 17:5 and 7 that he used Moses' staff to make water come out of a rock. Did God need the staff? No. It was just a way to show what he will use, the ordinary, right? To contribute what we have, and he will make it extraordinary. God worked through the staff to make himself known. God promises that he will provide. We have to be willing to offer back to him what he has already given us. See, moms, don't underestimate the value of your ordinary in God's hands. We spend so much time comparing, wondering if we're enough, if we are doing the best things for our families, and God is just asking, what do you have in your house? In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 3, his divine power has given us everything that we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him who called us by his own glory and goodness. And in Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So let's go back to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 3. Elijah said, "Go around and ask all of your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all of the jars, and as each one is filled, put it to one side." See, faith is most often foreign and uncomfortable for us, and she's being called to step out in faith. This widow, this single mom, has to take steps of faith, even if uncomfortable. She has to ask for jars. She has to go knock on doors. This lets her neighbors know she's obeying God. And it's not glamorous, right? And she has to give up that thing that she has, not knowing that it'll be multiplied. It's really truly a step of faith. It might have sounded a bit crazy for her to collect a bunch of containers, but she demonstrated faith by doing the thing God communicated to her. God could have just filled up her container over and over again, right? He didn't have to ask her to do that, but that is how she stretched her faith. God requires our faith up front when you don't have the proof, when you have to walk through it. Otherwise, it's not faith. This is when our faith is stretched, it's strengthened, and this is how we begin to see ourselves and that God will come through every time. But in our faith, God promises to answer us. So therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. That's Mark chapter 11, verse 24. Now faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see. Hebrews 11:1. See, in the Bible, you can read story after story of people responding in faith. Think about Noah building an ark where there was no rain. How crazy is that? Or Joseph marrying Mary because she was having God's baby. Or friends who broke through a roof to lower their friend to Jesus for healing. But you can also look around you and see stories of faith every day. Mosaic Church is a step of faith. You know, our pastor and his wife Monica responded to God by starting this church in their house, in their living room. And it's been steps of faith that have moved us to borrowed space, to bigger space, to, a campaign to raise money. And it's that continual steps of faith that would allow us to grow as individuals and continue to reach others for Christ. Think about it. Faith is a word used quite a bit, but faith in God is an action that is not as simple as it should be. It takes practice to have faith. If you do something over and over again, you begin to believe in the end result. If you see it, right? You begin to know what will happen. Moms, you had faith that your children would grow up and be amazing human beings. I did, right? And if you didn't, it's probably very likely you wouldn't even have attempted to have children. But all kidding aside, we have faith that we want to have children and that there'll be a happy ending. But that is not always the case. It is our faith that will allow us to trust God even when the results are not what we want. See, we often mistake the desires of our hearts being the list we have created of our wants. But as we grow closer to God, the desires we have are those that God has for us. And we can rest assured in God's promise that He will respond. So we'll go on to the final verses 5 and 7 of chapter 4, 2 Kings. She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went to tell the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." Final point, y'all. This mom is showing us is that God stops where we stop. And yet, it's enough. Some of you overachievers are probably wondering, why didn't she just get more containers, right? But notice, what she had was enough. It was enough to pay her debt. It was enough to sustain and care for her family. See, moms, we can be riddled with guilt when things don't turn out how we want them to. When our children don't respond in the ways that we would like to see them. When we work too much or we don't work enough. When we believe there's missing pieces. When our kids don't walk or talk early. When they aren't social enough. When they don't have the latest fashion accessory or the latest video game, etc., etc. The list goes on. Some of the most guilty people are moms because we blame ourselves quietly and what we didn't do and what we should have done. But if we put our hope in Jesus, if we look to Him for wisdom and guidance and willing to receive like empty vessels so that our oil which is being poured into us will continue, He will give us peace. God promises that He is enough and will give you peace. Philippians 4 verses 6 through 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God which transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." We can also look at Philippians 4:9. "Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." And then Psalm 29:11. "The Lord gives strength to His people. The Lord blesses His people with peace." John 14:27. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." So as we celebrate Mother's Day, let's take the story of this mom to heart. Point number 1, get to know God more and more so you can know and claim His promises. It's the best thing you will ever do for your children and yourself. Point number 2, remember God wants your ordinary because in His hands it will become extraordinary. So bring all you have to Him. 3, be willing to take steps of faith, even if they're uncomfortable, because that usually means they're true steps of faith. And finally, 4, God stops where we stop, and yet it's more than enough. So keep pouring out His love, His grace, and His mercy through your life. Disruptions are going to happen, but we will trust in the Lord and not lean on our own understanding, but rather we will and always acknowledge God, and He will direct our paths.